want you to read. There's another guy who I think is line for line even more pompous than Walter Shapiro, which is saying an awful lot. Jonathan Alter. Do you ever read him?
No, I see. Unfortunately, I see him on
he's a
cable.
nightmare. He's in Newsweek. Now, this is a good example of the role of the pundit. We can talk about the role of the pundit in a minute. Okay. He was on the Today Show right after the scandal began. You remember that first wonderful moments of the scandal when you realized that you were going to look at Monica Lewinsky every day. She's a nice-looking girl. And here he is on the second day, and Katie Couric says, what does this story do to us as a country? Well, obviously it delivers us from thinking about the social security system for a start. Well, here's Alter. Now, this is just exactly, he's not even writing, he's speaking. This is how his whole nature is. Well, what's really troubling me, Katie, and I think a lot of other people, is the effect of this, in that it increases public cynicism. You go out and you talk to people and you say, what do you think about this? And they say, everybody lies, all the politicians do it. The problem with that is we break down the fundamental faith that we have to have in this system to have the kind of society we want to have. Just think about that. And the cynicism corrodes and kind of eats away at us as a country. And it's also just of a disgusting, tawdry story that makes you want to take a shower when you're either reporting on it, or I think a lot of people are viewing it, have are tired of hearing about it already. It's only 2 days old.
You know the term dominant primate?
No, what?
Among primates, there's a male that's dominant, and he gets to fuck all the females and gets the food first. And the others sort of, some of them get shunted completely out of the community and don't even ever reproduce. And they go around like this, you know, with their heads bowed. And our president is considered a dominant primate in our society. He's holy, you know, and there are other people like that too, generals, popes, and so on. It explains human hierarchy simply, and it's not that simple. And I heard a guy on TV who had grown up with Clinton from kindergarten and had known him all his life. And this was right after the inauguration. And this is what he said. He said, you know, I don't know. I used to call him Bill, but I don't know how to call. I think I'll have to call him Mr. President now.
Incredible. The thing about Alter, what's interesting about that quote, is that the way these pundits feel they have to constantly damp down the fires of cynicism. That's
a hell of a job here.
It's a hell of a job, because Americans are naturally cynical, thank God.
And, yeah, there's a lot to be cynical about here.
What?
There's a lot to be cynical here.
I know. Cynicism is the birth of opposition.
So, you're one of the few journalists on the other side, on the left side, the right side, you know what I mean. What effect do you think you're having, and why isn't there a daily newspaper of the left in America? We have, you have something like, things like that in England.
Not really.
Well,
what's the most liberal daily, I suppose, is the Guardian.
Yeah.
Right? What used to be called the Manchester Guardian. What is it? Well, I guess the reason it is a little bit to the left of mainstream American papers, I suppose because there's a large social democratic party in England, the Labour Party. So the political gravity is different. The journalism of the left here at the moment is kind of a morass. Well, there isn't much of it, first of all. It barely exists. There isn't much of the left. I think there's a lot of dissidence and rather ebullient cynicism in society. You know, you go around, a lot of people, you know, if you go industrial, you know, the union types, a lot of people are very feisty and would like something different. And the political options, of course, are narrow as they always are. As far as journalism is concerned, I think it just isn't very feisty at the moment. And the nation's like a wet dishcloth, most of it.
Well, it's, alas, the best
still not very
Yeah.
good. The best line-for-line writing is in a little paper on the West Coast called the Anderson Valley Advertiser, which is feisty stuff.
They try to introduce that into a few stores here.
No, it's too far away. I do, what you were saying about difference, I think you can, like, what do? I do a newsletter with Ken Silverstein and another guy friend of mine, Jeffrey Sinclair, which we sell about 4,000 of that now. It's 4,000 subscriptions, which is good. And that actually does go to a bunch of producers. I mean, it goes to a bunch of people out there, but it goes to producers and some editors. And so you can get stories into the mainstream that way. Apart, the established journalism has got so lazy and so conventional that in the late 60s and early 70s, a public interest organization in Washington, you know, there are hundreds of public interest organizations with hard-working people toiling away at rooting out evil and exposing the evil man, and then they'll write it up in their press release. And then they put it out. Now, in the early 70s and mid-70s, there were enough mainstream papers would still pick that stuff up, like about defense cost overruns. Now there's no one there to pick it up. So anyone who goes there with a bucket and just goes around, you can get a lot of stuff. Because they've got very, very respectable. Again, I think what you were saying about the training of these journalists is so narrow. A lot of these kids have been through no really shaking experience at all. So that's one thing.
Well, it's the collapse of the 60s, isn't it?
Well, and then even
the
60s what? When
left politics. And the collapse of the Soviet Union. Do you know Bertel Oldman?
Yeah.
I
like Bertel.
You remember the, what was it called? The Left Humor Conference?
Did he actually have a left humor?
Comedy, yeah. A left comedy, first world left comedy conference and exposition, and I took part in that. A lot of people did, and I suggested that after the fall of the Soviet Union, we have the first left tragedy conference. But he didn't think that was so
The first time was
funny.
farce, the second time was tragedy. Leftists aren't very good at humor for some reason. And you know, again, with the Nation, you make a bunch of jokes and you can feel the readers get rested as the jokes come by. They don't like it. They want things, I used to call it miserableism. That they really want, my father used to say that when my father was here for the London Times in the late 20s, early 30s. And he said, then later he went off and joined the Communist Party in Europe and fought in Spain. But when he was here, he said he used to go by every day, he'd go by Union Square and there'd be an organizer out there, a commie. And the commie would be saying, comrades, even as I speak, hundreds of thousands of our brothers and sisters are groaning in the dungeons of the British Raj. And hundreds more thousands are writhing under the blood-stained lash of fascism in Latin America. Everywhere around the world, comrades are shuddering under the boot of fascism. Comrades, join the Communist Party. That kind of wasn't very alluring.